For the next 10 seconds, whatever you do not think about a pink elephant. This is one of the issues that we have as human beings, right? Is that when we are going through our day, thoughts can just intrude in our awareness, and our best efforts to try and avoid thinking about something are often met with actually having the very thought that we don't want to think about. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been discussing strategies for dealing with the mind. Why? Because what the mind says has such a powerful influence over what we do and therefore over the lives that we live. So if we want to live a more fulfilled life, then that begins with starting to learn new ways to handle our thoughts. We've been looking at one strategy called the ARRM strategy. ARRM stands for aware, remember, resolve, and move. Today we're going to be talking about the second R, which is to resolve. So far, what we've seen is that a lot of the time the thoughts that we have are not necessarily thoughts that we're choosing to have, but rather they are reflections of passengers on our bus. In other words, beliefs and thoughts that have been established over time based on things that we've gone through in our life. And if you haven't seen the video, check out the link to the previous week where we started to discuss remembering the foundations and the roots of where our thoughts kind of came from. So today, as we talk about this second R, I want to highlight that we start to now move into a proactive step in dealing with our mind. Resolve means coming to a chosen perspective of how we want to see a particular situation. So it's all too common that we get hijacked by our thoughts. You might be walking down the street and someone might look at you and automatically you might have a particular thought. Maybe your mind might say, wow, I must look really good today, and they're thinking I've got a great cap on or something like that. Probably not though. For most people, the thought may be something more like, oh, maybe they're judging me, or maybe they think I don't belong here, or something negative in a sense. The mind tends to go that way more automatically. But either way, thoughts can come in and hijack behavior pretty quickly. Learning to come to a resolve is important because it is so frequent that our thoughts that we experience drive our behavior more than the thoughts that we actually choose. You see, thoughts can be something that we experience automatically, or thoughts can be something that we choose intentionally. It's all too common that for most people, we tend to live by those automatic thoughts. Whatever our mind says in the moment determines what we do, and we live on that reflexive, reactive basis, in which case our life is often hijacked by thoughts from the passengers on the bus. Today we're going to be talking about adding more thoughts on purpose. In other words, having more resolves, choosing what we think. Let's remember our example from last week. We spoke about the example of a girl who had been bullied when she was young, and a passenger came on her bus that told her that she's not good enough, she's too fat, she's not acceptable, she's not worthy. And we kind of talked about how throughout her life, as she grows up, that passenger may not say the exact same things, but the nature of what the passenger is saying, which is that you're not good enough, is something that continued to echo in her life all the way through to her, maybe her mid-20s, when we gave the example that, she's going to talk to her partner one day about some difficult feelings that she's having about the relationship, but then her mind comes in that same passenger from, when she was a kid about being bullied. And this time the passenger says, oh, don't say anything, if you say something and you upset him, he'll leave you and you'll be upset, so just grin and bear it. So we kind of see that these thoughts can hijack her behavior to go against what she actually values. As we look at this example, something's important to see. So what we see is that when she is listening to those thoughts from her past, she is being driven by her history. And a lot of the time, whenever we're acting on automatic thoughts, what's important to see is automatic thoughts are often historically derived. In other words, they are echoes from past wounds or solutions to wounds, by nature historic. As an alternative, if we want to start seeing new fruit in our lives, if we want to start not only feeling less bad, but actually experiencing more good, it begins with starting to choose the perspectives that we hold. And that's what resolves are. So take a situation right now in your life. Think of something that you are maybe putting off, something that you might experience a bit of anxiety in your life about currently. And just take a moment to think about what that situation might be. And I want you to notice what your mind might be saying at the moment. Let's do that aware step. Notice what your mind is saying about that situation. Maybe it's about starting something new, like maybe going to a job interview, or meeting a new friend, or doing something different, in your life. And maybe your mind is saying you might fail, or that it's going to be too hard, or people won't like you, whatever it is. Now you're aware of the thought. The second thing is to actually see if you can notice the origins of that thought. Let's do the second step to kind of come to remembering. Where does this thought come from? Where did this thought come from? How long have you had this type of thought? Maybe not the exact one, but this nature of thought that doubts yourself, or that causes you to question yourself, or doubts whether other people will like it, whatever it is. years. How far does that go back? The second phase of remember what you actually value in this situation. I want you to see if you can actually bring to mind what you would like to see in your life in this situation. What do you value? What kind of person do you want to be? And lastly, see if you can write a resolve for how you want to therefore see this situation. So let's give an example. Let's go back to our example of the girl that we've been talking about. This woman's there in the relationship where she's not feeling fulfilled and she's feeling maybe a bit disconnected. But her mind is saying, don't bring anything up, because if you do, he's going to leave and you won't cope. She's gone through the first two steps. She's aware of the thought, and secondly, she is also remembering that that thought actually traces back a long way in her life, and she doesn't really need to continue to obey it if she doesn't want to. Choice has come back. Now we're going to go to resolve. As this woman considers her values and how she wants to be in a relationship, maybe she sees qualities like openness, honesty, transparency, and truth. In that, she may now come to a resolve to determine that it is more important to me to be open and transparent in my relationship than to fear losing the relationship. A resolve is something that sometimes we have to literally write down and fix our eyes on constantly, because the thing is, thoughts as experiences, in other words, those automatic thoughts, will keep intruding. A resolve is like an anchor point that we keep coming back to, a chosen perspective that we adopt to continue to focus on, irrespective of whatever the weather is doing. In other words, whatever thoughts and other experiences like emotions and sensations are coming up in our body. So we see that a resolve is a values-based perspective that we choose to adopt, superseding any fear or experience and prioritizing a value-driven living over a comfortable or a safe way of living. So I invite you this week to consider an area of your life where you find that your mind is sabotaging you from actually doing the thing you want. After you've noticed what your mind is saying, step 1, and after you've remembered the roots of those thoughts, step 2, and after you've remembered the values of how you want to live in this situation, then come to a resolve on what perspective you want to choose to adopt. This process is simple, but it's not easy. So I encourage you in the coming time to invest into trying to think on purpose more, to bring in chosen perspectives rather than simply following whatever the passengers on the bus are saying. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.